George Parr, you are a personal political advisor to Tony Blair. And as you are probably aware, there's been controversy recently about his decision to send his son Ewan to the London Oratory School, which is a grant-maintained opt-out school. Were you involved in this decision?
Yes, I was very heavily involved in this decision. I'm very close to Tony. Yes. And it obviously was a very sensitive decision, and we didn't take it lightly. We took it because Cherry Blair told us to.
But this school, the London Oratory School, I mean, it isn't an ordinary school by any means, is it? It was one of the first, if not the first, in London to opt out of local education control, local authority control. It's grant maintained,
yes.
and this is all against Labour Party policy, really. And not only that, but its headmaster. Its headmaster was an advisor to John Patton, and it was a flagship, in fact, of the government's policy. And as a result, he's been rewarded very heavily by the government. He's been given a great deal of money, £2.5 million alone, for an art centre, which was opened by John Major. And all this is against Labour Party policy, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. But,
yes.
There is a but. It's a very, very good school. And you surely can't blame a parent for wanting to send his child to a very good school.
No. Well, how did they know it was a good school?
Well, they read about it in the league tables.
Yes. But the league tables are against Labour Party policy too, aren't they?
Yes.
And there were 50 other state schools nearer to Blair's home which you could have gone to?
Yes, we did consider them very, very carefully. And of course there were crucial considerations that any family living in Islington have to take on board.
Well, such as what?
Well, uniforms, for example.
Yes.
Whether the uniforms match the decor in the Blair kitchen.
Yes.
And of course it had to be a Roman Catholic.
Yes, because Mrs. Blair is a Roman Catholic. But then there were 5 Roman Catholic schools, weren't they? He could have state schools. Yes.
Yes, that's true. But none of them were like the London Oratory School, you see, because Tony Blair was educated at a public school in Scotland, and he wanted to find the nearest thing for Ewan that he didn't have to pay for. I mean, not that he was mean in any way, but because of his principles.
His socialist principles.
I don't think we need to descend to personal insults.
No, I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. No, that was a joke anyway.
And I must say this. There was in this decision a really political agenda.
Oh, really?
And an element of personal sacrifice, which I don't think has been acknowledged.
Personal sacrifice by the Blairs?
Absolutely. You see, if you want to change an iniquitous institution,
yes,
like the British education system,
which is
divisive and elitist and unfair.
Yes. What do you do?
Well, the best way to start is by leaving it exactly as it is.
Yes.
And then gradually, surreptitiously, almost secretively, change it from the inside.
So that is what Ewan is going to do, is he, the son? He's going to be a sort of mole, is he, on the inside?
Well, I don't think he knows he's a mole at the moment, because he's only 10 years old. But after a few years of experience of this privileged, elitist education, with its cachet and its sense of
snobbery,
social snobbery, he's going to become angrier and angrier and angrier until in the end he'll just explode and tear down the whole shoddy fabric of this.
I see. So this is not what it appears. It's not a selfish thing by the Blairs at all. It's a rather revolutionary project, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Tony Blair is sacrificing his son by giving him an education which is better than 95% of the population enjoys, in order to destroy the system completely.
That's an amazing argument.
It is an amazing argument.
Yes.
I'm stunned by it, and I've only just thought of it.
Yes, but to most people this will smack a little too much of Machiavelli. They'll think that really the idea is that Tony Blair is just sacrificing political principle for personal advantage.
No, they couldn't be more wrong in that.
Surely.
And there is also a very deep political strategy at work here. Because, you see, Tony's problem is that he has got to persuade millions of disgruntled Tories that they can trust him.
Yes.
See, because at the moment they're afraid that as soon as he gets into power, the mask will come off and he'll be revealed as a socialist with left-wing Labour policies. And by sending Ewan to the London Oratory, he's sending a signal to these people.
That he's conservative.
No. That and a great deal more. The signal is saying he's not just pretending to be a conservative, and then later on he's going to revert to being a socialist.
I see.
Because by sending Ewan to the London Oratory, this is a guarantee that he's genuinely conservative.
So the policy announced, the current Labour Party policy, at least the one that was announced yesterday, I don't know, there might have been a new one today, but was Mr. Blunkett sent round a circular saying that it was Labour Party policy in the future that he would stop all opting out and make all grant-maintained schools go back under local authority control.
Well, I think that makes my point.
Does it?
Well, I mean, what better start could Ewan have than going to a school which, when he's finished with it, nobody else will be allowed to go to? I mean, that's you know.
Yes.
And besides which, Tony Blair simply isn't going to let Labour Party policies stand in the way of his son's future.
No, that's... Well, after all, he hasn't let them stand in the way of his own future, has he? So, thank you, George Parr.
Thank you very much. George Parr, you're a senior advisor to the Labour Party.
Yes, I am.
I wonder if I could ask you about the guiding principles behind the strategy of the Labour Party at the moment.
Well, I think at the moment the watchword is caution. Really, I think it's not a time for making silly mistakes.
I wonder if I could ask you a personal question.
Yes, of course, by all means.
What I'd really like to know is what particular area of party policy are you personally responsible for?
Well, I'm a party image maker.
There must be a reason why you're wearing this feminine outfit.
Yes, I suppose there must be. I think it's a signal.
Is it?
See, I think it's a signal to people that that New Labour is about style. People are very disenchanted with politics and politicians at the moment. They think they're being sold something which is not which is not the real thing, as it were. And I think this is a signal that we are on the side of those people who aren't particularly interested in politics, who are really, a lot of people out there just want to have a good time. They want to know what the latest club to go to, what the latest hairstyle should be, what the latest fashion should be, what they should be drinking, and that sort of thing. People who are after some fun.
And what are you offering them that is new?
Well, anything really. New hairstyle, a new body fragrance, new government, new Britain.
But doesn't
anything as long as it's new.
And new and fun.
New and fun. Yes.
Does this imply any sort of political programme at all?
It could do easily. Yes. Yes. I mean, why not? Why not? If we're in that sort of mood that night, yes. Why not? Let's do it.
George Parr, thank you very much indeed.
It's a pleasure.
Well, if you'd like to hear extracts from the first series of the Long Johns, you can buy the audio cassette, which is out in the shops now.
George Parr, you're the governor of a maximum security prison.
Yes.
And it's been a difficult week for the prison service.
We've had our ups and downs, yes.
You mean the prisoners going up over the wall and down the other
No,
side?
no, I was thinking in terms of the general morale in the service. Last week,
Yes.
the Tory party conference, the Home Secretary said prison works.
Yes.
And then this week he said that prisons were in such a shambles he was going to have to fire the Director General. So
yes, so you were rather depressed.
Yes.
Because the Learmont report, which was published this week, it does identify several managerial problems in the prison service. The fact that governors like you are surrounded by this huge mountain of paper every week. I believe one jail said that they received 230 letters, 45 faxes and 6 email messages in one day.
In one day, yes. That was a good jail. I wish I worked there.
Yes, but this is a great problem.
Well, it is a problem, and not only that, but General Learmont also pointed out and criticised the fact that we have currently, from prison headquarters, 38 separate new initiatives, policy initiatives, that we have to be carrying out at the present time.
Yes. He did also identify certain security problems at Parkhurst, where the 3 men escaped, didn't he?
Yes, well, of course, I'm not governor of Parkhurst, and so I can't really comment. I don't know what goes on in Parkhurst prison. I hardly know what goes on in my prison, because I've got so much paperwork. But, yes.
Yes, but he, for example, he did say that there was D-Wing, which was a no-go area for the warders.
That's right, yes.
And that the staff in the emergency control room failed to notice on the television monitors the 3 prisoners climbing over the
wall. Yes, but this is partly, you see, a matter of resources, because he did also point out in the report that the people on duty, the officers on duty in the control room, were not fully trained.
What would that training amount to?
We train people over a long period and we bring them into the control room. They say, those are television screens. You probably aren't familiar with them, but they are television screens. And what you do is sit and point yourself at them so that you can see them. They'll be showing pictures of the prison fence. And if you happen to see little figures crawling up the wall, then, you know...
Alarm bells should start ringing in your head.
Yes, or preferably in the prison.
And of course, Mr. Marriott, the governor of Parkhurst Jail, his whole regime was somewhat criticised, wasn't it?
Well, it's very easy to criticise Mr. Marriott and governors like him for things like having ice cream vans in the prison and having barbecues for the prisoners. I mean, it sounds like woolly-minded liberal regime, but I mean, there are security benefits to these things.
In what way?
I mean, the barbecues, for example, are a very good way for prison officers to meet the prisoners. To actually get to know them, you see, because, I mean, they don't know the ones in D-Wing, because they never get into D-Wing.
They can't do that.
The prisoners won't allow them, so
they could
you can point out, you see that the man over there eating the flaming sausage, that is Strangler Jarvis, or whoever it might happen to be. He's a very... he's a very desperate and dangerous prisoner.
Yes, he would be. Yes.
So
it is a lesson in prisoner recognition, being able to recognise a prisoner when you actually.
It is very valuable for prison officers to recognise prisoners.
Well, I can see that would be an enormous advantage.
Well.
Such a thing.
I'm sorry, because I mean they might recognise him in the street, because it was pointed out by General Learmont, of course, that after the Parkhurst escape, one of the escapees was passed by a prison officer who didn't recognise it, and so it is very useful if you're out in the street and you're a prison officer and you see a prisoner coming out of the newsagents And you think, well, hang on.
I've seen him somewhere before. It must have been at the barbecue. Yeah.
This is appalling. No,
that is very, very useful. One could see that, especially if the man coming out of the newsagents was carrying the till. But if one could get back for a moment to the Home Secretary, Michael Howard, I mean, would you say that as some have, that there has been too much interference by the Home Secretary in the administration of prisons?
Yes, I mean, that has been said, but I mean, it's very good to have a hands-on the Home Secretary, somebody who takes an interest, and we always look forward to his visits to the prison. They weren't very frequent, but he always had something to say to everybody. He would say, what are you in for? And I'd say I'm the governor. And then he'd say, thank you very much, and goodbye. Or occasionally, thank you very much, and you're fired.
Yes, no, I was thinking more of the gap which has been identified this week, particularly between what's called policy and what's called operational matters.
It's difficult to make the division there. I mean, previously we've always thought that policy was pretending to the voters you knew how to deal with crime, and operational was pretending to your staff that you knew how to deal with criminals. But now, a rather more simplified definition is that policy is when things are going all right, and operational is when they aren't.
But let's just say, for the moment, that Michael Howard really meant what he said. That he was, in other words, he was telling the truth. He wasn't lying.
Well, we have to assume that, do we?
Yeah.
Or for the purposes of this argument.
Yes.
Yes. Wait a minute. Give me a minute. It's rather like watching the X-Files, isn't it?
Take as
yes,
long
all
as
right. No.
Yes,
I've got it. Yes,
so if he actually means all these things about sentences and sending people for life after 2 strikes and you're out and that sort of thing, then the prison population is just going to rise just
tremendously, yes. I mean, we already have one of the highest prison populations in the world. We have 51,000 people in prison, and of course it will go up to twice that, 3 times, 4 times.
And it's going to be ruinously expensive.
It is.
We can't afford it.
We can't. Well,
because we have to build new prisons.
But even if you don't count building new prisons and so forth, it still costs. For example, in my prison, on average, it costs £816 a week to keep a prisoner in my prison.
So that's
£43,000 a year. Now, this I've come up with an idea which I've put forward to the Home Office. Is what you do is, if you say, all right, it's 43,000, half of that is, say, let's say 22,000, and you go to a prisoner and you say, look here, would you like to make £22,000? It will pay you £11,000 down now. You go out, you don't commit any crimes or anything for a year, and then you get another 11,000 on top of that. And now, this at a stroke, you see, will halve your prison budget.
Yes, it would. And you wouldn't need the other half because you wouldn't have anyone in the prison.
There wouldn't be any crime.
And there wouldn't be any crime.
No. Good idea.
That's rather the only flaw in that otherwise terribly ingenious piece of social engineering is that there isn't a punishment element.
There isn't a punishment element, and of course a lot of people want that. A lot of people want that more than anything else. They want
more than not wanting any crime.
And more than not wanting any crime, more than not wanting justice, for example. They want punishment. So in that case, we will have to do what has been suggested anyway by Learmont and others, which is to introduce American systems.
This is the Supermax prison.
The Supermax prison for the most violent prison, all in one place.
Yes.
So, well, with any luck, some of them will kill each other. So that
would be a help.
It'd be a help.
And of course, the boot camps.
Boot camps where we put indisciplined yob teenagers and turn them out as highly disciplined, fit, aggressive criminals.
Yes.
And chain gangs and tagging and the rest of it.
Do you think that these American ideas would work in this country?
Well, as we all know, there's very little crime in America. So I imagine they'll be as successful here as they are there.
Yes. Yes, because this is the first priority of any prison service, isn't it? Is to prevent crime too.
No, the first priority of the prison service is whatever happens, Michael Howard isn't to blame for it.
George Parr, thank you very much indeed.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Well, I don't know. I still can't make my mind up. I've got all this stuff from the three candidates, and trying to balance the points one against the other is difficult.
Well, that's what you have to do. You see,
Yes,
you have to balance the points.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
what do they say?
Well, the Liberal Democrat has got 2 children and sings in the choir. The Conservative has got 1 daughter in New Zealand and plays hockey.
Well, he plays hockey or the daughter plays hockey.
Ah, you hit on something there. Yes, you have, because... yes. As it stands, it's ambiguous, you see. I think we should press him on this point.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to vote for someone who plays hockey.
No.
And then it turns out it's someone else in New Zealand.
Exactly.
I mean, these are really serious matters.
Yes.
We're trying to decide the future of this country here. We've got to know the facts.
You've absolutely got to know the facts, and we aren't being told the facts.
No.
You certainly can't take these manifestos at face value.
No, you've got to read between the lines,
Yes.
as we're attempting to do. And it's the same when you talk to them. It's the same with verbal communication.
Oh, is it? Have you talked to them?
Well, you can't turn around in the market without one of them grabbing you and saying, look, what are your problems? Let me solve them for you. There's nothing I won't do night and day for you, is it?
And you see, and for the past 5 years, you haven't seen hide nor hair of them.
I've never seen anyone in this pub.
And they're knocking on your door. They've been round to see you.
Yes, I've had all 3 knocking on my door. And the one dressed as a gorilla from the referendum party.
Really? No, he hasn't been round. Well, what's his line of argument?
It's very hard to say.
Is it?
Because he keeps stuffing these bananas in his mouth, and frankly, I couldn't understand a word he was saying.
I think he might be a real gorilla. I mean, they do have some very odd people running for the referendum party, don't they?
It's true.
I mean,
yes.
can a gorilla stand for Parliament? I don't know. Is it possible?
Well, I know they can't vote.
No, they can't vote. No, they can't. But I mean,
that doesn't mean they can't stand.
No, I suppose not. No.
But the worst of them is a Labour man.
Oh, really?
Yes. I mean, he knocks on my door 3 times a day to tell me about the principles that he spent his political life fighting for.
Why does he come around 3 times a day?
Because they change 3 times a day. I mean, you know, I said to him, sometimes it's very hard for me to know what you do stand for. He said, you think it's hard for you?
Yes. Well, this is, of course, the Malays. This country, the Malays, at the heart of the politics.
Absolutely. I mean, for 5 years, they ignore you completely.
Yes.
And then, you know, suddenly in 4 weeks, you've got to make up your mind on these huge, you know, subjects.
I mean, none of them have been in this pub, not any one of these people have been in this pub for the last 5 years, and suddenly they say, oh, come on, you've got to think which fiscal policy is likely to lead to macroeconomic stability in the medium term. I mean, we're just not equipped to do it. I don't think anyway.
I mean, all they're interested in, frankly, is just calling each other silly names.
Yes, well, that's what I must say. It draws me to the Liberal Democrats because they point out quite rightly, and I didn't really take this on board, you know, that the other 2 parties are really indulging in playground politics. And until I saw that Liberal party political broadcast where they had Blair and Major as puppets hitting each other with clubs, you see, I was a very profound political analysis. I thought that. Yes.
Yes. So you're going to vote, Lib Dem, are you?
Well, I don't know. I've got a soft spot for Barry Ashdown. You know, I mean, I can identify with him. He's an old man like me, and he knows what it's like to be a grandfather, knows what it's like to be impotent.
I didn't know he was impotent.
No, I politically. Impotent, I mean, he says, you see, most people would vote for Liberal Democrats, except they don't think that they got a chance of winning. Whereas if they did vote for him, then they would win.
Well, that's like me saying if I had a lot of money, I'd be a rich man.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is a bit.
If I weighed a lot, I'd be fat.
Yes, exactly. But you see, what actually prevents me from voting Liberal Democrat is this absurd thing about having more taxes to pay for public services.
Leslie, forgive me, but
what?
The public services need more money.
Yeah. Oh, well,
money.
They do need more money, but not my money.
I've studied, this campaign.
Have you?
And I've come to one conclusion.
Yes.
Which is, they're all the same. I mean, look at them.
Yes,
look at them. They're all the same.
No,
look at
I
them.
don't know. I don't know. I think it's a bit hard. I mean, Liberal Democrat's got a little ginger moustache there, you see. And she's older than the other two, too, as well. So you can't really say they're all the same.
No, I mean, they're all as bad as each other.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yes.
And I don't mind telling you, I'm sorry to have to say this, I never thought I would hear myself say this, but I'm actually leaning towards not voting at all.
Oh, no, I can't condone that. No, you've got to play your part in the democratic process.
No, sorry, but I mean, this is a matter of principle. Leslie, I want to register my disgust.
Yes.
I want to send a signal to Westminster that I'm disgusted with all politicians.
How are you going to do that?
Well, I'll sit in the pub all day.
Well, you do that anyway.
No, I mean on election day,
I see.
I'll sit
yes.
in this pub, and
Yes.
it will send a signal, to the politicians that that's what I feel.
Well, I'm not sure it will, Peter. I mean, how the politicians in Westminster know you're going to sit in the pub all day?
Well, there's in the polling station. There's Mrs. Hoskins sits at the table. You go in, she gives you a thing and crosses your name off the list, doesn't she? Well, come 9 o'clock, she'll look at the list. She'll see, my name isn't crossed off, and she'll say, "Hello, where's Peter?"
Well, she'll know where you are. You'll be sitting in the pub, like you always do.
Well, that makes my point.
Well, no, it doesn't. I mean, Mrs. Hoskins is the only person who will know that you haven't turned up. I mean, I know she's a bit of a gossip. But even she's hardly likely to ring 10 Downing Street and say, "PM, there's something you ought to know. Peter's still sitting in the pub."
All right. Well, in that case, I know what I'll do then. I'll make my protest more dramatic.
Really?
I'll go to the polling station.
Good, yes.
And I'll spoil my ballot paper.
You'll spoil it? Yes. How? How are you going to do that?
I don't know. I'll just knock a cup of tea over it.
No. Mrs. Hoskins wouldn't let you take a cup of tea into the polling booth. She's very rigorous about that.
Well, then I'd have to rely on my own resources, wouldn't I?
I don't follow. Sorry.
I'd, pee on it.
Oh, no, certainly that wouldn't go down at all well with Mrs. Hoskins. She likes to run a very clean polling station.
But she wouldn't know about it. That's one of the glories of our democracy.
She'd see you doing it.
No, she wouldn't. It's a secret ballot.
No, it's secret up to a point. But the curtain... it comes down to about there, you see. I mean, she'd see the salient areas, all right. And in any case, when it comes to the count, and you see it on television, and they tip up the boxes onto the table to count the votes. I mean, this soggy thing will come out, and somebody say, "Oh, my God, somebody's peed on the ballot paper."
Yes, but they wouldn't know it was me, would they?
But the whole point is you want them to know it's you, don't you? I mean, you want to register your protest.
Well, in that case, I mean, I'd have to rethink. There are other forms of protest.
How do you mean?
Direct action. I could take. I mean, it would mean entirely changing my whole, line of attack.
Well, you'd go up a tree or something, would you?
No, I wouldn't do that.
What would you do?
I'd sit in the pub all day.
Well, that's what you were doing for the last one.
No, but this would be different, because this would be, one issue politics. I'd be like Swampy. I'd be stopping the motorway coming through this pub. In fact, I would, what I'd do is I'd cement myself to this, to this bench.
Well, nobody would notice anything different.
Well, they would when they came round to evict me, wouldn't they? Because they'd have to take the whole,
No, but I mean, look, there is no plan to put a motorway through this pub in any case.
Well, that's what you say. But, I mean, you can't trust this government or the next not to put a motorway through here. I mean, that's the whole central issue of this campaign, which is you can't trust politicians.
That's perfectly true. I mean, if we, what we really need is a candidate of our own, you know, who's above it all.
We need a white knight.
A white knight, exactly.
You know, like that you know, man from the BBC up
and yes, Noel Edmonds, isn't it? Yes. Man of absolute integrity that everybody respects. Yes. Well, it can't be Noel Edmonds, so he must be, whoever it is, yes.
There is only one person.
Absolutely, yes. God bless her, yes, the Queen Mother, yes. Yes, we should try and persuade her to run, I think, as an independent.
Do you think she might?
Well, I think if she knew her campaign headquarters was in the pub, she might, possibly.
What would she stand on?
At the beer crate, I think, on the floor. She'd have to have 2 beer crates. She's a tiny woman, of course. Queen Mother.
No, sorry. No. I mean, you know, her political philosophy.
Oh, her political... Well, I think, you know, what we would want her to stand on would be keep politics out of the election.
Isn't that a bit close to the Labour Party?
It is.